Thank you for that.
That's all right, my pleasure. Morning, folks, and welcome to the Fire and Rescue Authority Human Resources Committee. Have you got any apologies for absence?
Chair, we've got apologies for lateness from Councillor McCormack, who will be turning up.
Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. Minutes of the last meeting, any matters of accuracy? Matters arising? Can we agree them?
Yeah.
Agreed, thank you. So item 4, the organisational health update.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pass over to Amy to present this paper. Right. So, members will recall at the last meeting we talked about changing the format of what we bring to yourselves, partly because of when the meeting's full, but also because we wanted to give you more of the explanation as to what it is that we are doing. So this is a narrative report, really, that describes the work that we are doing across our people and culture support services to make sure that our workforce is properly supported in the work that they do. So this will now alternate with the kind of data report that members are used to seeing. So I'll talk you through each section, and I have got some kind of jazzy diagram printouts because I thought it would help kind of bring it to life what I'm describing. But I will also talk through those. We're at an interesting point in the year, so the stats don't look quite like what you've seen before, but I assure you they are all statistics that you have seen before in terms of the culture dashboard. So, talking first about the leadership framework, we continue to improve our offer for aspiring and existing leaders. We've developed and improved our leadership framework over the last few months, making sure that our training and development is there from firefighter right the way up through to chief fire officer, and includes all of our non-operational colleagues as well. We've adopted the National Fire Chiefs Council's leadership programmes at a supervisory level. Because of the style of learning that our operational staff tend to favour, we have found some issues with that being entirely online. So we've provided a wraparound support, which is a face-to-face additional top-up for our own staff as well. That really helps us embed those learning messages through into what it is that the way we do things here. We are one of the founding partners of the East Midlands Transformational Leadership Programme, which I know many of the councils are also involved in. We find that leadership programme really useful for our middle and senior managers because it gives us that opportunity to network around the county and wider, but also a kind of cross-pollination of ideas, an understanding of what other sectors and other people, particularly in the public sector, are doing at the moment helps us really grow our middle managers. That's backed by the Nottingham Trent academic rigour that comes into that as well, so we find that a really productive programme. In addition to the kind of structured programmes that we deliver, we also offer coaching and mentoring, both in-house and with a pool of external kind of reciprocal arrangements. And we deliver 360-degree feedback and diagnostics like the Myers-Briggs, so the MBTI, that some of you I'm sure will have undertaken. These are all around kind of developing your individual awareness so that you can build those skills and work on areas that you might consider yourself weaker in or where your peers think you've got development growth. In terms of that coaching and mentoring, moving on to page 9, we've recently relaunched our coaching and mentoring, and we've actually developed an app on our SharePoint page so you can express an interest in either becoming a coach or receiving coaching or mentoring. That really is to allow us to track all the people that are formally receiving that coaching and mentoring support. In addition to that, we train our own managers in a more coaching style. So most of the work that we do is through that coaching development style of management. Every new firefighter who is taken to station will also get a mentor so that somebody can bounce ideas off, they can do additional drill times, they're not always in front of their crew manager or their watch manager if they feel they need a bit of support with a particular element of firefighting. We deliver HR essentials at the moment, and we've been delivering that for a number of years. That's everything from how to have a challenging or difficult conversation through to managing sickness absence, performance management, and that's delivered across both the green and the grey books. During the work that we did on the professional standards review, we've had it highlighted that some of our policies and things can be quite difficult to understand for a new manager. They're often written from a legal perspective. So we've done quite a lot of work to improve those. I can talk about it again in the paper that is at the end of the meeting. But as well as providing more streamlined guidance, we have put in place an improvement to those those training tools. And it's a small thing, but changing the language from HR essential training to manager essential training is about us empowering managers to take the lead, to nip things in the bud, to do more of that frontline work themselves rather than kind of calling our HR team. That then frees our HR team up to do more of the strategic work as well. So the culture dashboard, you've got the front page at the end of last year. It's not quite the end of last year, frustratingly, because we actually had 93% PDR completion, so that PDR isn't quite right. So the culture dashboard is something we have developed with our colleagues. We had a number of working groups working with us on it. Essentially coming out of the independent reviews that were undertaken both of London Fire, but also His Majesty's Inspectorate, the 2 reports that members will be aware of around conduct. We looked at that and thought, this is something we need to reflect back regularly to our workforce, how things are going, how we are working on this and what they can do to support that improvement journey. So the dashboard looks at different areas, and there's more information. You can break it down by your station, but also by the different themes across the top, just by clicking through it. It's a Power BI dashboard, so it's accessible, different versions accessible for different levels of the organisation. So senior leadership team can see more information about what those grievances and disciplinaries are than your frontline firefighter. But they can see the overall trends and what it is that we're doing about them. So we've got in there, for the benefit of those who can't see this, improving diversity, so how we are doing in recruiting different groups, our leadership information, so that's kind of starters, leavers, transfers, and the information coming from our exit questionnaires. We've got how we're handling misconduct, how confident people are in raising concerns, but also the number of concerns that have been raised through our confidential reporting line and web portal. We've got psychological safety. That is a question that we ask on our biannual staff survey. So understanding how safe people feel to raise concerns, to have difficult conversations within their teams. We've got core code of ethics. So that's how many people have undertaken the training and report to us on an annual basis that they do feel confident in, that they understand our core code of ethics. We include information on wellbeing and support. So that talks about the absence in that tile that's in front of you, but we also, if you click through it, you can see more information about which types of officers are struggling with different types of concerns. And again, that's information that's reported here, but it is a more visual way of seeing it for our firefighters and frontline managers. And then we've got an area of training and development. That really talks about our non-operational training. We have a separate dashboard that talks about competence, where we would expect the numbers to consistently be in the high 90s. Everybody is regularly drilling and regularly doing their maintenance and competence to make sure they are up to speed and ready to go out the door when the pips go off. So this is really around the cultural understanding across the organisation. Shall I pause there in case there's any questions on the dashboard?
Yep, thank you. Colleagues, got any questions about the dashboard?
Just a quick one. On the absence categories,
Yeah.
you've got 4 there. What's the red segment?
Oh, now you're asking. I'd have to go away and check, I'm sorry. It's because it's so tiny, it's not ended up. I'll be able to load my machine up while Leela does one of these reports and let you know in a minute.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues, we wish to know? I suppose anything I was thinking of, in terms of the improving diversity, because we've got, say, black and ethnic minority percentage of the workforce. I suppose one thing we'd have to consider is percentage of the population, wouldn't we, for it to be reasonable? Because obviously the city's got a lot, we've got lots of black and ethnic minorities, but actually the county actually hasn't, has it? I think it's one of the fewest in England. So I'm just thinking about, do we benchmark it on that? Or?
Yeah, so it's benchmarked it, when we click into it, it's benchmarked against the national average for fire services. We've also got the local population in there.
Yeah.
And then the way that we work when we're looking at the realities of what we might be able to recruit from in terms of pool, we do break that down by station area, because you're absolutely right, where we're looking at on-call stations, if there's no diversity to pull from, we wouldn't be expecting them to find people that aren't there.
Yeah.
So we might be doing better than we think on that one. I don't know, I'm thinking.
Well, the national average is 6.2%, something like that.
Yeah.
It's higher in Nottingham, where I think we're about 40%. And then you've got to take into account the county, which is completely different. So there'd be a balance on in terms of that. I mean, the other thing I was thinking was obviously you've got disability, and I've mentioned this before, and LGBT, and obviously if we use the Equalities Act disability, I'm assuming. I'm just wondering if our workforce are aware of that, because we've probably got more disabled people if you use that definition than 5.9%. I don't know.
Yes, it is based on self-reporting. So one of the issues that we all seem to struggle with is getting people to record that.
Yeah.
And part of that is understanding the support that is available. So the Genius Finder Pro has really helped us to understand how much neurodiversity we've got within the organisation. Right. But there are also people with long-term limiting health conditions who could be going in and updating that within our iTrend system, but perhaps are not doing.
It's the same, I suppose, with the LGBT, isn't it, in terms of that? So it's probably underreported. I mean, the only thing obviously that stands out, obviously we always have this discussion, isn't it, is female firefighters, where we've got 10%, and that's the big difference, isn't it, in terms of what we've got.
Yeah, 50% of the population, 51% of the population. Yeah. However, we have to be realistic about the physical demands of the job. So not every woman, just as not every man, will be able to pass our physical assessments at the start. So I'll talk more. In fact, I think it might be the next thing I'd like to talk about. Okay. Around how we're working to support people before the process so that they can reach the bar. But the reality is we can't change the bar, because that's what we're required in order to make sure we can effect the rescue. Yeah.
Sorry, Steve, go.
On the misconduct handling, the grievances and the disciplinaries, I presume this is a year, is it 25, 26?
Yeah.
What would be useful is to know, is that a trend that's going up, going down, is that average for a fire service to have that amount of grievances and disciplinaries? Just trying to get a sense of where we are benchmarked. So
I will bring that as part of the data report as well. Has gone up slightly. We're still below the national average from memory. I think one of the things we struggle with is in implementing really clear misconduct and supporting people to get that right. It might go up before it comes down, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So it's not always a recognition of things going wrong. It's about people's confidence to report it, and that we are now dealing with it effectively. So.
Sorry, I guess that dovetails in as well to kind of psychological safety, and also the changing of terminology with managers, training and encouraging them to actually address HR issues themselves rather than, because talking from experience, I think a lot of organisations a lot of managers don't think it's their responsibility to deal with management problems and that they can pass it on to HR. So we do consider this a concern when things are reaching these levels where we have to take a full investigation and take it all the way through. Not all of those will be seen as a disciplinary issue. Not every grievance becomes disciplinary, and not all of the disciplinaries will be founded at the end. So that's an indication of how many processes we've got going on, rather than how many things are definitely a problem.
Doesn't seem excessive given the size of our workforce, I suppose, does it? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so the next section looks at the other kind of shiny diagram that I've handed out. So as part of our commitment to working to support our staff to overcome any barriers to their learning and development, we've been working with a community interest company called Genius Finder Pro. They offer an online platform which enables individuals and organisations to better understand their unique abilities, skills and challenges, as well through their use of these, what they call spiky profiles. What we've found is it's a really helpful tool, particularly for our neurodivergent employees, because it gives them a really easy access system that they can then access support, and each one, essentially they undertake a questionnaire, so it's self-reporting of the things you feel most confident and capable around. So you can see these are heat maps of the people that have undertaken it at the moment. We've had about 60 people, both a mix of, it's more than 60 people, we've had 120, and then we've got, so this is, half of them roughly are non-response and half of them are our response crews. So what you're looking at in the two pictures is the difference between people who are in the kind of desk-based jobs versus people who are operational. And there's some broad trends across there. So as you might expect, you find people in our operational side who high, reporting themselves as good with spatial thinking, manual dexterity, things like creativity can often come up with them, and motion and balance. So lots of people with a previous life in an athletics career or something like that, and lots of people who perhaps had a trade before or since they've joined us as well. Whereas in our more office-based profile, you see people who are more comfortable essentially behind the computer doing reading, writing, numeracy type skills. In one sense, it's not that surprising, but on an individual basis, what it really gives you is that focus of this is a development area for me, this is something where perhaps I need more support, or my learning style is much more likely to be face-to-face, show me rather than give me a booklet. So it has led to quite a few changes and kind of tweaks across our training platforms. So we still deliver quite a lot of e-learning, we also deliver classroom learning, but wherever we can for firefighters, we then back that up with a show and then a do, so that they've got the opportunity to see someone else do it and then have a go themselves. We recognise that is a really good way to develop our colleagues with these more neurodivergent profiles. We've also been working with our external examiner provider, the IFE, to make sure that where people need extra time because they've got now either a diagnosis or a kind of heat map that shows that they are dyslexic, we make sure that they get that additional time, because we recognise your ability on the incident ground might not be best reflected by your ability to answer a long set of exam questions. We want to give them the opportunity to pass that with a bit more time, or a scribe, or whatever support they need to be able to get through that process. This is a tool in development, and they've developed one specifically for firefighters with us. We are testing it throughout this year. We've got an arrangement with them, and at the end of that we'll evaluate it and work out which way to go forward. But it has been a really important piece of work for us in changing some of the cultural ways that we do our training and assessment, as well as supporting the individuals. Shall I take some questions there? I have given you an odd-looking diagram, I recognise.
First time I've seen one of those, actually. It's interesting. Have we got any questions, colleagues?
Yes, so are we requiring everyone to do one of these elements? It's all voluntary or...?
This is voluntary, so it's people who think I could do with a bit of support, or I'm struggling with something often. So it definitely isn't a reflection of everybody.
Right.
There would, if you did it with the whole population, I suspect it would be less spiky, you'd get quite a lot done.
Yeah. And then eventually then, because this is still a trial effect, isn't it? So once we've decided whether we're carrying on with it, then how are we going to do some sort of awareness raising or campaign or whatever to everyone else in the organisation to encourage them to do this?
So it is available for everybody. We've done quite a lot of awareness raising. So we've said to people, you don't need to be dyslexic or autistic to undertake this. It will give you the nuance, whether or not you have a registered disability or a known condition.
Yeah.
What it should do is just give people that tools of, actually, I could do with working on my self-regulation. So it's another tool in the arsenal when you're going for promotion or thinking about your long-term career or even your relationships at home. So a lot of people have done it without an awareness before that we're struggling in any particular area. And then there's a suite of tools on the back of it that are things you might want to do to support your learning in this area.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, it's not really a question, it's an observation. A lot of this would be quite predictable.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm finding surprising, I'm just wondering why, emotional regulation. Now, the heat spot for the front line is actually quite low. Now, is that a reflection of the trauma that they're exposed to?
So,
or does that relate to emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
it's difficult to pick up because this is 60 people's altogether, but the heat spot for them is looking at the highest concentration is that 2.5 level, whereas for office-based staff it's at 3 up to 3.5. So it's not a massive difference actually.
But very different jobs though.
But very different.
I mean,
yeah.
Emotional regulation, is that, what actually is that? What's the specifics of that particular category?
I'd have to look at the exact question, but yeah, it's your ability to retain emotional control in a difficult situation. So you're right, they're facing more difficult
given
situations.
the situations that they walk into on a daily basis, you would think in order to be effective, you've got to be shut your emotions down.
And it might be the way they're reporting it as well.
I think when you answer the question, it's all relative
Yeah.
as well, isn't it? So,
I think the response is it depends.
yeah.
And I mean, essentially, if it is sort of emotional intelligence, you've got 4 domains anyway that are intrapersonal and interpersonal. So you've got the first 2 domains that are looking at, you know, very much internally about your ability, your own sort of like self-awareness and managing that and regulating your own emotional state. But then it's your ability for social awareness, so reading the politics, if you like, reading between the lines, people that work for you if you're a leader or a manager, and then managing that social situation. So those 2 domains are much more interpersonal. So I guess it is that for me would depend on how it's worded in the actual questionnaire.
So it might well not be incidents that they're thinking of. It might be those times where they've got to tell a colleague that
You have a difficult
I need you in,
conversation.
or
Yeah.
a conversation in the office rather than
Yeah.
their response to an incident.
Right, yeah,
Uh,
that would make sense.
It's always going to be quite subjective, though, isn't it? Because you're going to think about your specific circumstances. And it's like, I mean, when it says, I'm sat there thinking, well, does that mean you can no, it's not just anger, is it? It's also could be happiness, for example. You're saying about your personal life, whereas if they're thinking about on the job, of you know, working, etc., it's going to be, you know, there's going to be things they, as John says, they see that are going to upset you, aren't they? They're going to think, well, actually, you're going to have a reaction to it, as opposed to if you're in an office, obviously, well, you know, I don't know. So there are flaws with it, but it comes down to an individual's interpretation of some of these. Because I'm actually thinking, what does social communication mean? If you know what I mean. It's
so the questions tease out kind of in this scenario and those kind of questions. But I guess what we're not saying people are necessarily bad at these things. They're saying they find these more challenging and
Yeah.
want more support with them. So yeah, I wouldn't. It's not a psychometric test. We're not asking people to fit in a certain pattern in order to work for us.
And we'll absolutely
But it just depends on your job. I think if you're a traffic warden and you're getting shouted at all day, for example, in a view, it's going to be much more difficult than if you're doing a job where, you know, it's more calming. I mean, honestly, that would be the case, wouldn't it? Like, do you get angry and upset when people swear at you? Then, yeah, probably on a daily, on an hourly
Not
basis.
anymore, I don't.
So,
It's the norm.
Yes.
it's relative, isn't it? So, yeah. Anyway, thank you. Any more? Morning, Andy. Any
Morning.
more comments there, colleagues? No.
Okay. So members are probably aware of some of these, but in terms of the employee voice and participation, I really wanted to describe the way that we offer that to our colleagues. So we offer monthly Chief Fire Officer briefings, which started during COVID, but the feedback was that our colleagues really like them and find them useful. Again, that kind of verbal communication, which is videoed and then you can watch it back if you weren't on duty at the time that it happened live. They find that really useful as an addition to our more formal written briefings that we send out. SLT members, so our strategic leadership team, undertake visits to fire stations and other workplaces on a regular rolling basis. These are really for informal conversations so that SLT can deliver some key messages and hear feedback from the front line. We offer open seats at our quarterly middle manager engagement days, but also at a number of our strategic meetings. So there's an open seat that any employee can attend SLT if they would like. We also have an inclusion and performance group, which looks specifically at our inclusion data and the work that we are doing to improve diversity and support people from different backgrounds across our workforce. The network chairs from the different areas are there, along with trade union representatives. That gives them an opportunity to scrutinise our performance management and our information alongside our senior leaders. We have an initiative called Little Acorns, which is on our intranet, so our SharePoint system. Staff can put forward any suggestion they would like, and then a manager will be assigned to explain, yes, we're going to do that, it's a great idea, or actually we're already doing it in this way, or why that isn't going to work at the moment or might be looked at in the future. So during the last 15 months, we had 34 suggestions, and 12 of them have been adopted. We also have employee user, sort of end user input into our major purchases. That's an essential part of our procurement strategy. It's not the only part, though. It will then form part of that best value decision making, so making sure we're getting the best equipment we can afford, and that we are looking to the market to make sure that we are
receiving the best quality and the longevity is within it as well. But we do receive quite a lot of feedback on everything from uniform to equipment, fire engines. Our new Halmatro equipment has recently been out for engagement and received really positive feedback, so we've gone ahead and bought more cutting equipment off the back of that. In terms of staff satisfaction, we're now a little bit out of time really. The last staff survey was undertaken in 2024. We had a response rate of 68%, which is quite high compared to other staffing groups. When we benchmark that across other areas. We have a really high area across autonomy, connection and purpose, so that's probably reflecting the strong watch culture that we have. We did have some really strong feedback around the work environment, particularly joint headquarters, but some of our stations that have since received significant upgrades and support. So members will have seen those through our other, you'll have signed some of those off at Fire Authority, those significant investments that we've made in making our frontline stations suitable for our staff. We'll receive another staff survey as part of our inspection in June, and then we have another one planned for this year, really to make sure that we are continuing that feedback journey and progressing those actions that people tell us are of concern. Shall I pause again for any questions?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, when you say about the survey, because obviously autonomy, purpose and connection are really high, and that's all the psychologists say that's the thing that makes people happy at work, isn't it? So for there to be such a 20% differential, when you obsess about it, tells you we've got some issues. We're talking about places like Stockhill that need refurbishment and others, or?
Yeah, so particularly around places like Stockhill has been, obviously is on the list.
Yeah.
But we've got a number of stations where we have done remedial works and kind of works inside rather than not the whole thing down and start again. So Asheville's had a refit.
What about joint headquarters? You mentioned that. Has that been an issue?
So joint headquarters is probably the same issue you've experienced this morning. We have a problem booking meeting rooms and finding parking spaces.
Yeah.
But and to be honest, when we did this survey quite soon after moving in, so there are inevitable teething issues, people understanding where they fit, making sure we've got the right setup and dynamic. So we've worked quite hard with staff groups wherever we can to group them together so that they are sitting in fire areas rather than always next to their equivalent in the police. But we still benefit from that cross-pollination of ideas when we can.
Well, I mean, hopefully we might see some improvements. We took a new one.
I hope so. We've invested a lot of money, so I sincerely hope those work environment ones have come up.
Good. Any more questions or thoughts there, colleagues?
The surveys, are they anonymous? Or
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So no names, but also, well, I suppose to a certain extent, if they're talking about Stockhill, for example, people will know where they're from. But have people got the option to, if appropriate, not to put in which station they are, what they're doing here?
Yeah, it's fully anonymous.
Yes.
So the whole thing is sent through an external company who make sure that what the reports that we get back, we can't identify people unless you say,
Unless you particularly want.
Unless in the free text box you describe an incident
Yes.
and a thing that talk about a person, we can't get that information. And even then, we wouldn't get that with your whole survey. We'd get that in amongst the kind of free text box information. We also make sure that it's not identifiable. So if you're, for example, the only female on the watch at that station, that gets blended out for the data so that we can't see who said what.
Yeah. Right. So it gives people the confidence then to be honest.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So just to briefly describe the whole-time firefighter process, during the last half of last year we went out to advert for whole-time firefighters with interviews taking place during January. It's a highly competitive process, as members are aware. It takes us around 6 months to complete, from around 500 applicants down to the 24 that we actually need. A key aspect of that is ensuring we get the right people for the job. So we do a lot of work through our always-on engagement, that happens through our community engagement team, but also a kind of boost that we do in the 6 months in the run-up to this, which is our positive action time. So we're making sure that we are visible across different communities and in different geographies across
Nottinghamshire. So everything from park rooms and gyms to making sure that we're at football events and having those conversations with the community groups that we're linked in through our various befriending work about what it means to apply, the fitness standards that you need to pass, and then supporting people on that journey. So we run a series of have a go days where people come in, they can have a go at running out hose, have an understanding of how heavy the equipment is and the kind of training that they will need to put themselves through before they turn up for a bleep test. So they also get a trial of the bleep test. Because if you watch it on the telly, it doesn't look that fast, but if you understand it when you're going through it, it's a very different feeling. And we find that some schools do a lot of bleep test type activity, or if you've been in a sports club, you might have had an understanding of how to do that pivot at the end so that you're as quick as possible. But if you've never had the chance to do it before, it might just be a technique that we need to teach people. So we'll do that support during our Have a Go days. Of the 506 applicants, we had 31 successful, 7 of which are currently employed as on-call firefighters, so those individuals already giving up their time to support us in the more rural areas. They are 27 men within that, 4 women. 26 of them were British or from a white background, other background, and 5 from an ethnic minority group. I will provide more information as we go through our committee meetings, but that's just to give you an indicator of where we've got to. The first course started at the beginning of the week, I think last week, April 9, at SDC, so we have got 11 people started on that course. Unfortunately, we've had 1 injury before they even got there, so that person will be deferred. We will then take another 12 in January, and where we can, if we need to, we will make sure that we blend our courses so that we get whole-time and on-call firefighters through our whole suite of courses throughout the year.
Thanks. Steve?
Yeah, a couple of questions. 31 were successful, but 24 starting the programme. So are those other 7, the 7 that are on call, are they sort of, do they do a slightly different programme? So that's my question on that. And then second question, obviously 24 out of 506, you know, you can see how competitive that is. Of the 7 that were on call, was that 7 out of 7 who applied, or did more on-call people apply who didn't pass? I'm trying to work out, how is it a greater percentage if you're already on call, you're more likely to then get through the process because you pretty much know roughly what standard you've got to get to?
Yeah. Yes, so the 7 are the people who are currently on call. The way that we do our training for on call is a 13-week course, which is exactly the same as our whole-time course, which is 14 weeks, except there's a week of rope. So we need to bring them back in to do that 1 week to make sure that they're ready to be on a whole-time appliance. Yes, it gives you a big boost, actually, because you understand everything. It's not a guarantee. We had a significant number of people apply from on-call to join the whole time. If they were already competent, we're able to take them through our migration process. And I think, I have to double check, I think we only took 3 through that process. The others are people who are not at the end of their training programme yet, but have decided to join us on call because they're so keen to join us whole time. Obviously, being around our equipment and our people and understanding our values and having done the job, it's a huge boost sitting in front, as you might expect, but it is definitely not a guarantee. We've been really running quite robust processes, and we've seen some really impressive talent from other areas, so people who work in industries and other parts of the county and really come forward with some really impressive skills, so they've got the job.
Thank you. Any more questions on that, folks? John?
31 out of 506. How many positions were there to be filled?
Well, 24 at the time we went out to recruitment.
Okay.
We've since had some retirements, and we've by January there will be 31. So we are filling, essentially we're filling our list until we get what we need. There might be a few more than that. But, so we've got 24 places on the training course. We've ended up with more people because we don't need to put more through the training course.
I was just saying, so you got all the people you wanted. It wasn't like out of the 506.
We could
There was only
easily have got
31
another
made
12
the grade.
if we wanted to. Yeah, there were a lot of really, really good applicants, and that top
bracket, many of them were achieving 100% on their interview and their job-related tests. There's some,
Fantastic.
it's a really impressive cohort at that top. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah. Andy?
What sort of, pardon me, what sort of percentage would physical ability and stamina would encompass that?
I can bring kind of the breakdown as it goes through, but we lose a lot at a bleep test, essentially. So we're then down to 200 from bleep test. Then we're doing the physical tests. So we're taking people, can you pick up this 50-kilogram thing and run backwards and forwards with it? And then we lose a lot of people there. So by the time we are reaching our interview, we're interviewing a lot less than 500. Yeah.
We'll go out in the yard afterwards and do it.
We'll have a go day and see.
Been there, done that.
You never know, Steve. Okay, so anything more on that, folks? The recommendations, just to note the report and receive regular updates, etc. We happy with that?
Yeah.
Thank you. We move on to the gender pay gap.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the annual statutory requirement for organisations that have got more than 250 employees to proactively publish their gender pay gap annually. Just to point out, this is a lagging indicator, so the gender pay gap that we're presenting today covers the financial year 2024 to 25. So section 2.1 summarises the requirements under the regulation for the specific measures which we need to publicly report on, and section 2.2 provides a summary of the outcome of our gender pay gap that we're reporting. So when we look at the mean hourly pay gap, that has reduced from 5.05% to 3.71%, and when you look at the median gap, that's reduced from 3.24% down to 2.8%. And just for context, the public sector pay gap as an average is around 10%, and the private sector pay gap is around 12.5%. So compared to those national metrics, we are comparing favourably in the service. Section 2.5 sets out that by reporting a gender pay gap, what we're not saying is that we are paying men and women different rates to undertake the same role. The reason that we have a pay gap is because men make up a disproportionate percentage of our workforce, so around 81% of our workforce is male, so by its nature it means that more men will be in management positions than women as a percentage, so that's why we're reporting a pay gap. And you can see the table in section 2.7 sets out the proportion of men to women for the different staff groups in the organisation, and probably as you'd expect, actually within our support function, women make up 55% of the workforce in those sections, whereas the sticky issues that we have with regards to response staff, both whole time and on call, you will see the percentage of the workforce that is women there is much lower. And then section 2.8 onwards just talks about the plans and policies that we have in place to continue to seek to reduce the gender pay gap. Some of that Amy's already talked about in terms of our recruitment activities, positive action activities. But there's also work that we do internally to look to identify talent within the organisation and work to minimise the barriers that we've got to internal promotion and progression as well. And at section 2.12 you can see some of the bullet points there of the work that we have either completed or continues to be underway to support women in the organisation. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, if there are any.
Have you got any questions, thoughts, folks? I think it's good to see progress, isn't it, in terms of we look comparatively quite good.
Yes.
And obviously there's a disadvantage in terms of the nature of the employment and the nature of our workforce, isn't it? That's inherently the case. So obviously if you go for an operational route to get promoted, which most people do, it's going to be overwhelmingly male, isn't it? And then I suppose you've got the physical requirements of the job, and that's just when we can't do it. Obviously, you know, I'm not sure anyone here other than yourself could, but that's an issue in itself, isn't it? For being honest, and you can't lower the bar, can you? In terms of you saying we'll get more people in, but they've got to get through the physical test, etc. So I suppose it's getting people to apply in the first place.
And that's the key to it, and it's why, you know, we are moving in the right direction, which is positive, and I think that supports some of the leadership and management development input that we've been doing in the organisation. But you're right, if you're not getting people in as firefighters, then they're not there to progress through the organisation. So it's definitely why this longer term approach to encouraging a more diverse cohort of applicants will in the longer term pay dividends.
So I suppose there's also an element we've spoken in the past about people often apply, don't they, if they've got firefighters in the family or they know somebody or their friend's a firefighter, etc. So I suppose if we had more women doing it, then naturally that would be, yeah, it could increase exponentially.
Yes.
Has anyone got any thoughts? John?
I'm just going to build on that, Nick. Is the fire service nationally, does it come under scrutiny because of a gender pay gap?
It comes under significant scrutiny from the Inspectorate with regards to the diversity of the workforce generally, and it is a particular issue not just in Nottinghamshire but nationally. Women are very underrepresented within the operational workforce.
So it's a bit of a misnomer. It's not a pay gap thing, it's a misrepresentation.
Yes,
As Nick just said, if there's 80% are male, and they obviously will go through the ranks and get into higher paid jobs, there's going to be a pay gap.
yes.
So this is the gender pay gap is making it into an issue, which isn't the issue.
Yeah, it's the way that I think when people hear the term gender pay gap, the automatic assumption is women are being paid less. Women are being paid less for doing the same role. That's not actually what the reporting metrics tell you. But you've got to. I think when you just see the headline figure, that's the natural conclusion to maybe jump to, isn't it?
Yeah, I say it's a very demanding role. Biology says that
it's a proportion and a representation issue rather than purely a pay issue. I suppose is the way to summarise it.
Well, we are making progress on it, and one of the blessings we have, and I suppose there's also a problem, is our turnover of staff isn't that particularly high in those positions. So people stay 20, 30 years plus, don't they? So as a result, any changes you're making now, it'll take years down the line to actually make those sort of differences, which is a good thing, because it shows that, going back to the survey, people are generally satisfied with their employment and can get a lot out of doing the role. Is there anything else on that, colleagues? No? Okay. Recommendations, just we note the reports, and then we look at the actions trying to enhance career advancement of women in the service. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, move on to the His Majesty's Inspectorate Standards of Behaviour Progress Update.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just set the scene and then I'll pass over to Amy to give the specifics of the report. So this report in one form or another has been through the committee a number of times now and refers back to the HMIC Standards of Behaviour report, which was published nationally back in March 2023. There were 15 recommendations for fire and rescue services, and we've been reporting progress against those recommendations for a number of months now to the HR committee. This will be the final update as we report the closure of the last remaining recommendations. So I'll pass over to Amy to just summarise what they are.
So on page 23, I will jump right into the ones that we are reporting as newly closed. So the extent to which services are identifying misconduct. The service has now created that dedicated professional standards function, so we have a post holder with that specific line within their job description. and that's managed within our HR offer. So that's following the review that members understood from the last report that came back in November. We have then changed a number of our processes. So the area which had an outstanding action under effectiveness of misconduct processes was at 2.26. It was requested that we ensure we did a full review of our policies, systems, resourcing and capabilities. That review has now been undertaken, and we have made sure that we've got really user-friendly guidance for our operational and non-operational frontline managers. So we now provide not only the policy, but that user guidance. And then we've taken it a step further by providing that updated manager training. At 2.27, we had the request and expectation that we would deliver specific training for investigators and chairs of hearings, and then also for those hearing appeals. We have now delivered that to investigators and appeals chairs. We also have a revalidation plan in place to make sure that people get an update every couple of years and that people are maintaining their competency around managing investigations. We then had an outstanding recommendation around understanding our misconduct and sharing those lessons learned. So those are now complete. We now have an internal meeting where we look at the trends as well as individual case reviews, looking at how a case has been broken down and any learning that we can deliver from that. We also share an annual report and biannual data as part of a national data return to make sure that we can compare across services. And I'm an active member of the People and Culture Leadership Hub through the NFCC. In addition to that, colleagues and members have seen the culture dashboard, which is about us reflecting that back to our workforce so that they can understand what is happening in relation to misconduct. And that closes all of the recommendations. There's a table at the back that just briefly describes the action that was required and where we've closed that action off. Some of those actions happened slightly outside of the timetable that was recommended by His Majesty's Inspectorate. That's because we really wanted to make sure that we did this the right way for our organisation, and we embedded the learning as part of our overall training programmes and our own feedback. So we're there now, pleased to close it all off.
I think just to comment on that as well, when the misconduct report was published, some of what was reflected in that report we didn't necessarily recognise locally, and that's not to say that there are no issues, because we'd be naive to think that they weren't, but we really did want to adopt a prudent approach to avoid the unintended consequences of some of these changes, and potentially in trying to fix a problem create a different one. So what we've done or sought to do is to implement the recommendations in a way that fits our culture and our leadership aspirations and our ways of working within the service. So I think what we've seen and what we've learned nationally is some services, in the way that they've implemented some of the recommendations, they've then had to down the line and wind up some of that work. So it has, particularly with the professional standards recommendations, we've taken our time with it, but I think we've arrived at a place that we're really confident at now.
It's a false economy, isn't it? A tick-box exercise is a false economy.
Yeah, and I think, you know, our case numbers, our misconduct case numbers are extremely low. So again, it's also about being proportionate in terms of how much energy and investment and time we spend on that versus some of the more positive people and culture improvements that we want to make as well. So we've tried to balance those aspects of work.
Any other thoughts on that, colleagues? No, happy? So recommendation, we just noticed the progress, etc. that's been made. The items have been closed. Are we happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, we're on to item 7, which is exclusion of the public. So I'll just read this paragraph. To consider excluding the public from the meeting during consideration of the following item in accordance with section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972 under Schedule 12A, Part 1, paragraphs 1 and 3, on the basis that, having regard to all the circumstances, the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information, because the post specified within the exempt minutes can lead to the identification of individuals within the Nottinghamshire Fire and Rescue Service. Are we all satisfied with that, colleagues?
Again, please.